Chernobyl and Exponential Functions Project. Exponential functions. The original function is f of x equals a to the power of x, and it's represented by a curve. When a is greater than 1, the graph increases and it is called an exponential growth. When 0 is less than a and less than 1, the graph decreases and is called exponential decay. It does not have a vertical asymptote, but its horizontal asymptote is based on the shift. The original function always has a horizontal asymptote of 0, but with a shift up or down, the horizontal asymptote is the value that was moved vertically. The domain for both growth and decay will always be all real numbers, but the range will be all positive real numbers in the original function. The reference point for both growth and decay will be 0, 1, unless it has a translation over the x-axis or a shift to either side. Exponential growth and decay. Exponential growth is any kind of growth that becomes even more rapid in proportion to the current value, with a fixed percent, which if graphed is represented by a curve. The function is represented by a whole value greater than 1, a, and an exponent, x. The larger a is, the more rapidly something increases. The main characteristics of exponential growth are that every time there is growth, this will happen at a rate of a to the power of x power every time. This means that it will always increase. One of the most common examples of exponential growth is money, or interest. Imagine that Marcela invests $300 at her bank, which offers 5% compounded annually. The growth factor for the investment is 1 plus 0.05, which equals 1.05. Therefore, the formula will be A equals 300 times 1.05 to the power of t, where a is the future value of the investment and t is the number of years since the investment. If we want to calculate how long it will take for it to double, the formula will be 600 equals 300 times 1.05 to the power of t, then 2 equals 1.05 to the power of t, then log base 1.05 2 equals t, where t will equal approximately 14.2 years. On the other hand, exponential decay is the rate at which a phenomena decreases rapidly, the opposite of growth, and is represented by a values between 0 and 1, with the exponent x. Their main characteristics are that there will always be a decrease. The closer the number is to 0, the less time it will take for it to decay fully. Now, Marcela bought a new car at a cost of $25,000. The car depreciates approximately 15% of its value each year. The decay factor is 1 minus 0.15 equals 0.85. It must be less than 1 but greater than 0. The formula will be A equals 25,000 times 0.85 to the power of t, where a is the value of the car now and t is the number of years since the purchase. If we want to calculate the value of the car in 10 years, the formula will be A equals 25,000 times 0.85 to the power of 10, which will equal 4,921.86. Nuclear plants and Chernobyl.
The fact that nuclear energy does not release pollutants into the atmosphere turns it into a renewable way to obtain energy. However, the fact that it doesn't pollute isn't enough justification to have nuclear plants in a country, especially around areas where an accident could cause either an extreme environmental devastation or a high-risk exposure to people, plants, or animals. Nuclear plants do provide very high amounts of energy to the recipients, but so could solar panels. It was a normal Saturday on April 26, 1968, at the Vladimir Ilyich Lenin power plant. A test was ordered in order to save more energy, during which the security systems were deactivated. This, however, failed because there was a problem with the nuclear power plant, where it overheated, and this caused the hydrogen spread all over the interior as a consequence. There was a sudden blast. Uranium and graphite were then released into the air, both being chemicals characterized by their very high radioactivity. The effects of this test were all negative, and it was one of the most devastating of all nuclear explosions of this sort.
The nuclear power plant in Mexico is Laguna Verde, located in Alto Lucero, Veracruz. It is the only one in the country. It produces 4.5 of the electrical energy in Mexico. We don't think it is, at any degree, safe to have one in Mexico, because the regulations are weak and a disaster can happen in any minute if we are not cautious, especially with the fact that there have been many rumors of problems with the plants and its regularity. To add on, we do not agree that we should possess a nuclear power plant in Mexico because, aside from its danger, we already have a lot of issues to deal with in the country, and instead, we should focus more on renewable resources. There is a lot of land in Mexico that is not being used correctly. We should install windmills to compensate the removal of nuclear power plants.
Yes, according to some sources, proper controls could have prevented the meltdown in Chernobyl. Once the explosion had happened, the radiation that had been kept inside had spread too fast. Besides, at the time, the authorities knew what had happened, yet they didn't report it until 2 days later, when a nuclear facility in Norway detected a very high level of radiation surrounding them. Although probably containing that amount of radiation is extremely difficult, maybe having alerted people as soon as the disaster had happened could have prevented a lot of the consequences that followed, such as obviously an increase in number of cancers and deformity, as well as the death of plants and small animals with thin skins. Also, because of the air currents and because we live in the same Earth, the effects of radiation affects everybody in it. However, through the building of a chamber to isolate the decay, a possible second explosion might have been. According to Greenpeace, every human alive now and over the next 1,000 years will carry radioactive elements created by nuclear tests, research, and deployment. Research about these effects has linked radioactive waste to over 22 kinds of cancer in those who work in nuclear facilities. In a nuclear explosion, however, the number of casualties does not depend on the event itself, but as well with the population density, the ground conditions, weather conditions, and the capacity of healthcare system to respond to the explosion. Nuclear accidents such as Chernobyl have spread radiation across Europe and North America. In the Chernobyl areas, they have seen mental retardation, genetic damage in human and plant life, and thyroid cancer because of this exposure. It is incredible when you realize how much damage nuclear weapons do to innocent people around the globe.
We think that it is very dangerous to be exposed to radioactive elements. People should stop making tests or experiments with radioactive plants until it can be safe to work with them, and a lot of research must be done to accomplish this. A solution is to find new alternatives to make things without using nuclear plants, and finding cleaner ways of helping the planet. It cannot be until in the future they find a way to make it secure when it must be used in our world.